The seven deadly sins are a band of knights in the land of Britannia who had disbanded 10 years earlier after being framed for plotting a coup against the Leones kingdom, the Holy Knights, who sequestered them before taking control in the wake of a rebellion they organized. Leone's third princess, Elizabeth Leones, finds the seven deadly sins leader, Meliodas, before they track down his comrades so they can clear their names and liberate Leones from the Holy Knights, who were manipulated by a demon named Fraudrin into unsealing the demon race from their prison. Outside of Leones, Alione, a young squire, walks through a desecrated residential area with an older knight. They stop at the site of a bloody battle, where dozens of holy knights lay dead. The knight explains that all of them were killed in the blink of an eye by only 7 people. Years later, near Kane's village, a figure clad in full suit of armor shambles across the fields. Nearby, at the Boar Hat Bar, many patrons visit for drinks and food. They have a reputation for good booze and terrible food. The people mistook the owner for a kid because he was as short as Chopper. He served them drinks and a meat pie that looked like it came straight out of Shokugeki no Suma, but unfortunately, it tasted like Shion's cooking. A man bursts into the bar and states that he saw the infamous Rust Knight. The people believed that the Rust Knight is just a made-up story to scare kids into behaving. One of them pointed out the wanted posters and explains that the 7 deadly sins had massacred holy knights, including the Grand Master, 10 years ago. Loud creaking noises stop conversations in the bar, and Hawk, a talking pig, could smell rust. The door swings open, and a large armored figure shambles in, causing the people to run for their lives. The knight collapsed after mumbling a few words. The bar owner took her in and discovered that it was a young woman. The owner brings her back to his room and checks to make sure that she's a woman by fumbling her divine fruits and sniffing like Tarzan, much to the frustration of Hawk. When she wakes up, she asks what happened and where she is. He replies that she suddenly passed out in his bar. He makes food for her and she agrees that the food is terrible, but still says it's delicious as she began to cry. She explains that she's looking for the sins. Outside, Alione and some knights demand entry so that they can arrest the Rust Knight. Alione recounts his experiences at the uprising 10 years ago, telling them not to underestimate the sins. His team doesn't believe him. The knights shout at the bar again for the Rust Knight to come out, and Hawk comes over dressed up with pieces of armor. Alione confronted the owner, who was making a fool out of him, and lifted him up like Goku and Zeno. The young woman tried to sneak out of the bar. One of the knights noticed her, and Alione calls for them to inform Twigo. The knights chased her through the forest, and Alione mused that he can finally be an apprentice holy knight if he catches her. However, Hawk bolts in like a bull and knocks out all of them. They thanked the owner for saving, but as a man of focus, he was busy squishing her fruits. The owner asks why she's looking for the sins, and she replies that she's trying to stop the holy knights. Hawk questions this, saying that the holy knights are heroes who protect Leones. However, the woman reveals that King Bartra is not actually sick, and that the holy knights have commenced a coup d'etat to start a war. Though she knows they're considered criminals, the sins are her only hope in stopping the holy knights. Suddenly, Twigo cuts the ground below them, causing them to fall down the cliff. He tells the rest of the knights to write up a report about the casualties, but the owner grabbed them and landed safely on the cliff. Twigo was in disbelief as he asked how they dared survive. Twigo recognized the woman's earring as a mark of the royal family, concluding that she is Elizabeth, the 3rd princess of Leones. Elizabeth, Hawk, and the owner flee into the forest. Hoping to accidentally kill her, Twigo cut through the entire forest like Zorro, causing hundreds of trees to fall. The owner shields her from the impact with his body. However, Elizabeth then walks toward Twigo to give herself up in the hopes that a kind stranger would not be killed because of her. But Twigo was locked in and did not care as he launched another attack that split the ground open. The bar owner protected her again. He introduced himself as Meliodas. Alione wakes up looking for Meliodas, but a knight reassures him that Twigo can handle himself. Yet Alione says they should be worried as he had recognized Meliodas's dragon tattoo. Twigo walked them down Sasuke style and attacked Meliodas from behind, but instead, Twigo was the one who gets hurt. Meliodas stood while farming as much aura as possible. Twigo recognizes him and asks how he looked exactly the same. Twigo attacked again but does no damage. Meliodas counterattacks with his broken blade and caused the area to explode, using Twigo for a home run. He smirks, reintroducing himself as Meliodas, the dragon's sin of wrath who lead the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas explains to Elizabeth Elizabeth that he runs the bar to gather intel. He asks if she'll come with them, which she immediately agrees to. Twigo, surrounded by knights in a crater, tells them to call for reinforcements, but Hawk's mom, who could compete with Kaido in size, emerged from the ground to pick up Meliodas and Elizabeth. Meliodas made Elizabeth the Boar Hat's waitress, so she could gather information on the Holy Knights and the other 7 deadly sins. Elizabeth asked what sort of crime the 7 deadly sins had committed to be hated by the public, but Meliodas didn't give her a straight answer. He was beating around the bush, claiming to be a professional pervy sage. They set up the tavern outside of Bernia village. Meliodas mentioned that they had some of the finest ale, but the trio found out that a holy knight had cursed the village to stop their water supply. Gilthunder, a famous knight, had stuck a sword in the ground on some wannabe Excalibur, and the sword could only be removed by another holy knight. A child named Mead came up and said that his friends, the 7 deadly sins, could easily fix it. However, the villagers grew angry at his cocky attitude, which had caused the mess. When they started throwing rocks, Meliodas brought Mead back to the Boar Hat. Meliodas asked Mead what he meant when he said he knew the sins, but Mead immediately changed the topic. Elizabeth and Hawk returned to the Boar Hat, and Elizabeth told a story about how she, like Mead, had been a prankster to get her father's attention. Mead then confessed that he acted that way because he was an orphan and an outsider. However, Mead had decided to put a bug in Gilthunder's drink because Gilthunder had been treating the villagers badly, not because he wanted their attention. Mead ran off after hearing a commotion from the village. The villagers were arguing with 2 guards who were taking advantage of the knight's curse. Mead tried to pull the sword out of the ground, while the guards and villagers shouted at him. The village elder reminded the villagers that it was the holy knights who had insulted their village, not Mead. They finally realized their mistake and tried to help Mead with the sword, but for their power of friendship was not enough to pull out the sword. Meliodas wandered into the village and nonchalantly pulled the sword out, leaving the people in awe. Then the water began to flow again. He tossed the sword at the 2 guards who ran away. The villagers apologized to Mead and everyone celebrated at the Boar Hat. While struggling with her waitress duties, Elizabeth learned about the Forest of White Dreams, a place so dangerous that not even holy knights wanted to enter. Back at Fort Solgalis, soldiers reported to Gilthunder that Meliodas had pulled the sword out of the ground. After hearing the news, Gilthunder, who must have been a student of Lancer, took a spear from a guard, charged it up like Sonic, and threw it across toward Bernia village, breaking the universal javelin throw record. Sensing the attack, Meliodas stepped outside where Elizabeth was contemplating on the grass. Elizabeth talked through her troubles while Meliodas looked for the spear. Meliodas reminded her that her drive to find the sins gave her people a chance. Meliodas caught the spear and was pulled down the cliffside and into various buildings of the village. He redirected the spear right back to the fort, aiming perfectly for Gilthunder's head. Gilthunder was reading some reports when his Peter Tingles kicked in. He tilted his head out of the way, straight up gangster and not fazed. He also figured out that Meliodas was still alive. Meliodas knew that Gilthunder would be chasing them, so he said they had to leave Bernia as soon as possible. Elizabeth suggested hiding in the Forest of White Dreams. The bar gang soon arrived at the Forest of White Dreams, a place said to be so dangerous that even the holy knights avoided it. After walking for over 3 hours and losing their sense of direction, Hawk suddenly was able to perform a multiple shadow clone jutsu as he discovered copies of himself running about. All of the copies claimed to be the real one, until Meliodas easily defeated them. The mysterious monsters then transformed into copies of Elizabeth. In order to discover who the real Elizabeth was, Meliodas instructed them to perform various erotic actions. When he told them all to jump, only the real Elizabeth stayed on the ground while the fake copies jumped. With one attack, Meliodas defeated all the monsters, who were revealed to be the prankster imps creatures who loved to play hide and seek. The monsters retreated and the group decided to follow them. Worried that Meliodas was indeed a holy knight, the prankster imps decided to wake Diane, who had been sleeping in the Forest of White Dreams. As soon as she woke up, Diane grabbed Meliodas with her left hand only to realize that it was him. Diane's eyes lit up like Sanji when he sees women, overjoyed of finally reuniting with Meliodas, who was also her captain. Hawk and Elizabeth then recognized her as the sin of envy, Diane. She noticed Hawk's and her instinct kicked in as she used him for a barbecue. When Diane learned that Meliodas had been traveling with Elizabeth, she became jealous and threw him away. calling him a cheater. She used a Detroit smash on him and the impact destroyed parts of the surrounding forest. She continued to cry and rampage aura 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 style until she finally calmed down and listened to their explanation. When Meliodas revealed that he had no memory of what had happened 10 years ago, Diane explained the events to him. She told him that 10 years ago, during the National Foundation Festival, the 7 deadly sins had been summoned by the great holy knight, Zaratraz. However, when they arrived at the meeting point, they only found his lifeless body skewered with spears. The 7 deadly sins were then surrounded by all the knights of the kingdom and were branded as traitors to Leones. After the recollection, Diane decided to help search for the other members of the 7 deadly sins. Immediately afterward, the group encountered Guilt Hunter of the Holy Knights, who used Raikoho to paralyze them with rings of electricity. Upon realizing that Guilt Hunter was a holy knight, Elizabeth revealed that he had been like an elder brother to her. She was shocked to learn that he had been the one who attempted to wipe out Bernia and was then released from the electrical rings. When Diane demanded that he lift the spell, Guilt Hunter ignored her. He used a kickball move on Hawks and began to question Meliodas about whether he knew why the Holy Knights were after the heads of the 7 deadly sins. He answered his own question, stating that he wished to take revenge for his father, Zaratraz, and to surpass him. At that moment, Meliodas recognized Guilt Hunter as Little Gil, the son of the great holy knight. Meliodas broke the electrical spell and drew his sword. Guilt Hunter called upon lightning like Thor to slash Meliodas, but he easily countered it. Guilt Hunter then used Flash Step and cut Meliodas from behind, but once again he easily dealt with it. Meliodas dodged all his attacks and even went ahead to compliment him, for he had improved. Guilt Hunter, ever persistent, landed a huge blow from above. Meliodas stood back up and was immediately cut from behind. Guilt Hunter believed he was dying and asked for his last words. Meliodas deserved an Oscar for his act, as he used the opportunity to ask for the locations of the remaining 7 deadly sins. From Guilt Hunter, he learned the whereabouts of the fox's sin of greed, Ban, and the grizzly's sin of sloth, King. Immediately after receiving the information, Meliodas stood back up and rejoined the battle. He easily and swiftly dodged Guilt Hunter's attacks, attempting to quickly escape the battle and search for the 7 deadly sins. Guilt Hunter was about to deliver his finishing blow when Diane grabbed him with her hands and used him for a pitch throw straight out of Diamond No Ace. The Holy Knight flew into a chapel and injured priests and civilians who were praying to bring divine retribution to the Holy Knights. He remained unscathed and ignored the people who were wounded around him. Meliodas and his group decided to go to the Basta dungeon to get Ban because it was closer, even though a group of holy knights called the Weird Fangs were stationed there. Elizabeth grew concerned over Meliodas's wound from Guilt Hunter. However, he reassured her that he was fine. He entered the boar hat and was then discovered by Elizabeth to have fainted on the floor. At the base dungeon, the Weird Fangs are revealed to be located there in order to keep Ban confined. Ban, who was completely confined in chains, began humming a tune, even with metal rods pierced into his body. The gang went to the nearest town to get a doctor for Meliodas, but the people immediately took off after seeing Diane. A doctor eventually took care of Meliodas. Diane decided to get Ban on her, for it is what the captain would have done. Elizabeth wanted to accompany her, but Diane basically called her a cannon fodder. Elizabeth blamed herself for his injuries, but Diane told her that it was not because of that, but the fact that she was too big to fit into buildings and too big to take care of him. A holy knight suddenly appeared using Shino's abilities. The bugs began to spit acidic fluids all over the town. Diane was initially scared because she hated bugs, but she took care of all them with an earth-bending technique. Elizabeth went back to check on Meliodas. She found out that the doctor had been working for the Holy Knights, and he was never actually treating Meliodas but poisoning him. The Holy Knight Golgius suddenly appeared like the boogeyman and introduced himself. Golgius appears and attempts to take Elizabeth and Meliodas's sword back to Leones. Whilst attempting to take the sword, Meliodas would not let go of it, even though he was unconscious. We then get a flashback of Ban asking Meliodas why he was always walking around with a broken sword. Ban tried to take the sword from him, but Meliodas warned him against it. Ban did not care, as he kept kept on pushing for it. Diane, who was asleep, woke up and saw she told Ban to leave the captain alone. Meliodas then slashed Ban. Back to the present, Golgius finally pulled the sword from him, but Meliodas woke up and grabbed it immediately, with no effect of the poison showing. His aura was leaking out like the Shadow Monarch. Golgius was not backing down either until he saw Meliodas' death stare, which made him back down immediately, and he quickly ran away. Meliodas eventually found Golgius, and he admitted to be a coward that dislikes combat, especially with the likes of the 7 deadly sins. He threw 2 blades, but Meliodas deflected them. He was surprised that Meliodas could see the blades. Meliodas then told him that his pervy sage abilities had been maxed out, for he could see a woman's underwear from a mile away. The doctor came out and asked for his daughter, who was used as a deal for him to poison Meliodas. Golgius teleported behind the doctor, took him to his daughter by stabbing him. Golgius pursued the gang with persistent attacks as Meliodas was protecting them all. They hid in an apartment, but Golgius was able to find them as he suddenly appeared behind Meliodas, but Meliodas, with a battle IQ over 9,000, cut wooden floor and Golgius fell through it. Golgius once again escaped. Meliodas and Elizabeth set off to Basta dungeon afterwards. However, they are stopped by a confused Diane, who after hearing the sound of a bell, falls under a genjutsu and attacks the group. They try to run away from the berserk Diane, involving a pair of shepherds along the way. However, Meliodas soon succumbs to the same bell and begins to fight Diane. Meanwhile, in Based dungeon, Ban is shown wandering around after having dealt with Jericho. It is not long before he is found by Jude of the Weird Fangs, who stabs Ban in the chest. Meliodas and Diane were still fighting each other under the bell's genjutsu. Elizabeth shouted for them to snap out of it, and for a few moments they did, until the sound of the bell once again spurred them to fight. The Holy Knight Frisia then arrived using Shino's jutsu. She threatened the lives of the shepherds. However, Elizabeth stepped in to protect one of them, injuring herself badly in the process. It was then revealed that one of the shepherds was actually Ruin, and that he had been deceiving them all along. Ruin hit her so hard, she bounced like a rock skipping on water. She somehow managed to knock off the bell that had been causing the hallucinations. Enraged, Ruin prepared to punish Elizabeth further, but Meliodas quickly came to her aid. As Ruin was about to land a blow, he was all about equality. As Meliodas was tending to Elizabeth, Ruin used that opportunity to land 2 blows. Feeling on top of the world, thinking he had won the battle, Meliodas then hit him so hard he traveled back to the base dungeon. Diane stood over the Holy Knight Frisia, having that feeling of when you finally catch that one cockroach. Meliodas continued pummeling Ruin, shattering his armor. Ruin then activated his armament haki, but was still taken down in 1 blow. Diane was also victorious, and the team continued their journey. In the dungeon, Ban was able to overpower Jude and took him out. Meliodas and the others eventually entered Based dungeon, but it turned out to be a trap. Golgius locked them inside using the Eternal Seal spell. However, the reunion between Ban and Meliodas caused so much destruction that it obliterated the structure and nullified the spell. In Leones, it was revealed that King was alive and well, but he was working with Guilt Hunter. Ban wakes up from a dream about him climbing a giant tree flowing with a nectar that gives immortality. He then came across a fairy guarding the tree who used air bending to send him back down. Hawk calls everyone down. Elizabeth wakes up next to a rope-bound Meliodas. While they eat breakfast, Elizabeth asks Hawk to tie Meliodas looser next time, but Hawk refuses, saying that he'll have more hands than a teenage octopus. Meliodas chooses the gang's next destination to be the capital of the dead, where King is rumored to have gone. Ban falls asleep and has flashbacks of when he tried to obtain immortality from the Fountain of Youth. His attempts are all stopped by a mysterious girl who blew him away from the fountain each time. After multiple attempts, both Ban and the girl are fed up. Ban kept on coming back like that one mosquito that never gives up and eventually start talking to one another. It is then discovered that the forest will die if the water is taken, after which Ban stops all of his attempts. They also introduce themselves, with the girl's name revealed to be Elaine. The gang stops at a village said to be the closest to the capital of the dead and split up to gather more information on both King and the capital of the dead. Ban discovers a pair of siblings, Ellen and Luigi, and offers them some food in return for information on the capital. Their meeting is interrupted by the appearance of King, who stabs Ban in the chest. Ban could not recognize King because he had a 600-pound life transformation. King accused him of killing the woman guarding the Fountain of Youth. A fight erupted, however it is broken up after Meliodas stopped Ban and when King sees Diane, which causes him to run away. After being fed by Ban, Ellen opens up and repeats what their neighbor used to say all the time. Having obtained a hint to getting into the capital of the dead, the others try to find memories with which to unlock the way, albeit with no success. It is only as Ban remembers back to a time with Elaine that the gang is granted access to the capital of the dead. King secretly follows along behind them as the siblings watch in awe as they all disappear. Upon entry, Ban spots what appears to be Elaine in the distance, who tries to run away. However, he gives pursuit, with King following in tow. Back at the village, a mysterious female holy knight appears behind the siblings. Noting that the capital of the dead does indeed exist, the mysterious holy knight is revealed to be Guila, who threatens the kids and succeeds in gaining entry to the capital of the dead. Meanwhile, inside the capital of the dead, King finds Ban and confronts him, telling about how he found his home completely destroyed after they all separated years ago. Ban pointed out that it was pointless because he cannot die, but King had other plans. He activated the third form of his Chastifol, saying, Chastifol, third configuration, Medusa. He petrified Ban in an act of revenge for his sister. While looking for Ban and King, the two now split from the rest of the group to chase after Elaine. Meliodas and the others have a run-in with Gila. The battle begins between Meliodas and Diane fighting against Gila. Diane made quicksand around Gila, but it was of no effect. The spirit of Elaine chose to reverse the petrification, much to the surprise of King. Seeing your sister in love with the guy you hate had to hurt. Here, Ban and Elaine's pasts are explored. She was the one gave Ban the immortality nectar because Ban was about to die while protecting her and the forest. The tremors from the battle with Gila reached where Ban and King were, forcing Ban to join the fight against Gila. Left alone with his sister now, King listens to her plea to help Ban just as Hawk arrived with Elizabeth, who tried to pull the spear out from the ground to fight Gila. Seeing her determination, King decided to go help the Sins, who are still struggling even with the arrival of Ban in defeating Gila. King then appears and stabs his spear through Ban as he stood on it, farming as much aura as possible. With the appearance of King, the battle turns in their favor as Gila was treating our heroes like cannon fodders. King was moving like prime Hiruzen. He had too many techniques and eventually overwhelmed her with his Chastifol. Their time in the capital of the dead seemingly came to an end as Ban and Elaine shared one final close moment before being bid farewell by Ellen and Luigi, who were revealed to have been ghosts all along. As the group rested, King asked Meliodas about his relationship with Elizabeth. His pervy sage nature instantly kicked in as he began to fumble her divine fruits. Meliodas told him that she was the princess of the realm. King then transformed back to his 600-pound self with formal clothes to reintroduce himself. Elizabeth praised King's strength, noting how he had been able to defeat Guila single-handedly, whereas Meliodas, Ban, and Diane had struggled, despite it being a 3-on-1 battle. King responded that if any of them had their sacred treasures, they would have been able to defeat Gila with ease. He asked the gang about their scared treasures. Meliodas sold his, Diane lost hers, and Ban's got stolen. Truly the three musketeers of the group. This sparked their decision to begin searching for the others' sacred treasures. Elsewhere, the Holy Knight were at war with bandits and barbarians. Guilthunter and Hauser easily took care of those NPCs and went back home. Under the guise of being summoned by Hendrickson, Jericho and Twigo were taken underground and offered power through drinking demons' blood to gain more power. Meliodas and the others arrived at Vasil for its annual fighting festival, where the grand prize that year was Gideon, Diane's sacred treasure. Since giants were banned from the festival due to an incident years prior, Diane stayed back with Elizabeth for some girl time, while Meliodas, Ban, and King entered the competition in hopes of winning back Diane's sacred treasure. Elizabeth and Diane were out in the forest outside of Vasil, searching for anything that might be edible. Elizabeth stumbled upon a pile of mushrooms before a shadow loomed over her. Diane heard Elizabeth's cry and rushed over, only to find a frightened Elizabeth and a large creature that can only be described as a Pokemon that failed its audition. Diane tapped it on the head, and it squirted out pink smoke that engulfed them both. Back in Vasil, the elimination round of the fighting festival began. The rules were simple. Contestants had to push their opponents opponents out of the ring, and the last 8 standing would move on to the finals. The 8 who qualified were Holy Knight Griamore, a mysterious girl named Matrona, Holy Knight Hauser, Taizu, Old Fart, yes, Old Fart, Cain Barzad, Meliodafu, and Ban. After all the NPCs and cannon fodders were eliminated, the matchups began. In the first matchup, Griamore and Matrona stepped into the ring. Matrona was asked to remove her cloak to ensure she wasn't hiding any weapons. Underneath, she was wearing Elizabeth's clothing, which raised Meliodas' suspicions. During the fight, Matrona sent him flying faster than last week's rent. It was soon revealed that Matrona was actually Diane, and King asked how she had ended up that size. Diane explained that they had encountered a strange mushroom in the forest. King identified it as a chicken matango, which had likely shrunk them because it had felt threatened. Meanwhile, Hauser and Taizu faced off, and Hauser used his special ability and launched Taizu into orbit. In the next round, King faced Cain Barzad and lost after being pushed out of the ring. Elsewhere, Veronica went to find Griamore, followed by Hauser. When he caught up to them, he asked what they were doing there and learned that they were searching for Elizabeth. Back in the ring, King faced Cain Barzad, and well, let's just say Cain had the upper hand and King had the floor. After a quick push, King was out. King was as good as an NPC without his sacred treasure. The final round was Meliodas against Ban. During this time, Hauser learned from Griamore and Veronica that King, Ban, and Meliodas were part of the 7 deadly sins. He quickly rushed back to watch their battle. A battle between 2 of the 7 deadly sins should not be missed. Meliodas and Ban fight each other. They go head to head, and it looks like Meliodas, as Ban could not keep up with his speed, Meliodas absolutely speed blitz Ban. We then got a flashback about the first time Meliodas met Ban and their first fight. Back to the present, and Ban was about to take Meliodas to Suplex City, countered and reversed the throw. Ban grabbed his legs and kicked him to the sky, followed with Gomu Gomu no Gatling punch. Meliodas blocked all the blows and sent Ban back to the ground with a mean left hook. Ban had the upper hand after he absorbed Meliodas' power. Meliodas still fought back, gave Ban the legendary Hulk Ragdoll smash. The more Meliodas attacked him, the more his power was absorbed. This went on until he collapsed, and as Ban prepared to deliver the finishing blow with the confidence of someone who just found out their lottery numbers hit, but just as he closed in, Meliodas grabbed his wrist, crushed it like a stale breadstick, hit him with a 100% Detroit smash, and sent him to Team Rocket. King and Diane, watching from the sidelines, saw exactly what happened, but it wasn't the power that worried them, it was the look on Meliodas' face. He wasn't angry, he wasn't cocky, he was too calm, like the kind of calm you see right before someone flips a table. Next up, Diane charged into the ring for the first semi-final match against Hauser, but not before handing off a travel-size Elizabeth to Meliodas like she was passing off her purse before a roller coaster ride. Meanwhile, Veronica and Griamore were still on their wild goose chase for Elizabeth, unaware that she had temporarily become pocket-sized and was vibing in the front row. Back in the arena, Diane did her best to dodge Hauser's flashy tornado attack, not because it was dangerous, but because she really didn't want to ruin Elizabeth's clothes, for she had borrowed them. Hauser, clearly going for the dramatic finish, launched a full-on cyclone at her, but Diane had other plans. She activated her armament hockey and planted herself so hard that the cyclone might as well have been a hairdryer on low. One boom later, Hauser was out, and Diane was through to the finals. Then came the second semi-final, Meliodas versus Cain Barzad. Cain stepped into the ring and revealed that he knew Meliodas from back in the day, specifically from Danafor, a kingdom Meliodas allegedly destroyed. You know, just your average, hey, remember me? You blew up my hometown kind of reunion. Cain also mentioned that it was where Elizabeth had been born and asked Meliodas why he had supposedly killed Liz, the woman he loved. Meliodas, who clearly had some emotional baggage heavier than Diane in heavy metal mode, responded that he had tried to protect them, and this time he wasn't going to let history repeat itself. Cain, apparently convinced that Meliodas wasn't the world's most charming arsonist, asked if he could trust him. Meliodas promised that he hadn't betrayed the kingdom. With that, Cain nodded, dramatically turned around, and forfeited the match Shikamaru style. Meliodas advanced to the final. Now it was time for the grand finale, Meliodas versus Diane. Meliodas, ever the tactician, asked if they should just half-ass it, since either way, the sacred treasure would end up with them. But before Diane could answer, a few women on the sidelines catcalled Meliodas like he was a celebrity on a red carpet. Diane, visibly triggered, hit him with Sakura Classic. Meanwhile, Gila, Jericho, and another holy knight were on their way Vasil, with Jericho itching to show off her new powers. Diane relentlessly punched Meliodas, who kept trying to convince her that he had no idea who those fangirls were. Their brawl continued like a bad breakup, loud and dramatic until both of them suddenly froze like Naruto and Sasuke when Kaguya approached them. Meliodas turned to the crowd and declared to be what most people would deny, a terrorist, and that Vasil was theirs, giving them a generous 1-minute warning to clear out. The crowd didn't buy it at first because when has a short guy with a broken sword ever been scary? But they sprinted off the moment Gila, Jericho, and the Order Holy Knight pulled up like Pain, Yahiko. Jericho launched herself at Ban and wrecked him. Ban, the guy known for healing faster than you can say ouch, was shocked when his cuts didn't magically vanish. Meliodas faced off against Guila but got taken down by her chain explosion technique. King stumbled upon the unconscious bodies of his buddies, basically a pile of heroic failure, and was immediately attacked by Guila. Luckily, King had his sacred weapon this time and survived the assault. He easily defeated both Gila and Jericho like a veteran gamer, going back to the level 1 boss. He then told Hawk to babysit Ban and Meliodas while he went into full-on Batman mode. Diane was very upset when she found out that Gideon, her sacred weapon, was missing. Before Diane could process her feelings, Hauser showed up to settle some past scores because apparently, revenge waits for no emotional moment. But before throwing hands, Diane paused to help an old man. Then the third Holy Knight appeared and used his gravitational powers on Diane. She tossed the old man to Hauser and fell through the cracks of the earth. Hawk, the world's sassiest pig, managed to get Elizabeth, Ban, and Meliodas to safety like a four-legged Uber driver. While Elizabeth prayed over the unconscious deadly sins, she suddenly returned to her normal size. Just then, Veronica and Griamore walked by. Veronica handed Elizabeth her jacket, like a mom catching her daughter sneaking out in the middle of the night, and gave her a good scolding for running off with criminals. When Elizabeth refused to leave, Veronica went full drama queen and pulled out the goddess Amber, trapping Meliodas inside it. Elizabeth, not having it, grabbed both the jewel and Meliodas' sword and begged Veronica to let him out. Unfortunately, Veronica had no clue how the thing worked. Griamore trapped Elizabeth inside a magic shell, but Ban threatened to kill Veronica if she didn't let her go. King kept battling Gila and Jericho until a surprise twist dropped. Lovehelm turned out to be Helbram. King and Helbram squared off in an intense fairy-on-fairy fight, although it looked like Helbram had the edge mainly because he fights dirty and sparkly. Meanwhile, Ban got knocked out by Jericho again. Poor guy had a rough day, and Veronica was freed. Gila and Jericho told Griamore to hand over Elizabeth, but Veronica refused. In the confusion, Elizabeth pulled a sneaky move and ran away. Veronica followed, heroically shielding her from an explosion caused by Gila. Sadly, this resulted in fatal injuries, and Veronica died in Elizabeth's arms in the most tragic sister moment since Frozen. With Veronica gone, Gila and Jericho tried to snatch Elizabeth again. As she cried over her sister's body and called for Meliodas, Gila smugly told her that he couldn't hear her. But then the goddess Amber shattered with a dramatic burst of dark energy, and out popped Meliodas, looking very not dead and very not happy. Half of Meliodas was covered in a large dark purple birthmark. He had no emotions. Within the blink of an eye, he lunged at Gila and chopped off her hand like he was slicing through a sponge cake. Then, as if cutting her hand off wasn't enough, he blasted her with another wave of his sword that knocked her out cold. Jericho, determined to win the Best Sidekick award, rushed over and pulled a super recovery spell out of nowhere. Gila woke up, hand miraculously reattached. She immediately noted that Meliodas was radiating some serious evil main character energy. Ban, understandably concerned, asked if it was really Meliodas, so Meliodas responded in the least reassuring way possible, by cutting Ban in half. Elizabeth and Hawk huddled together like two popcorn kernels in a microwave, wondering if this edgy, unhinged version of Meliodas was really their Meliodas. He showed up in front of Elizabeth, gave her a very suspicious sniff like Tarzan, and then flew off like a moody superhero. He found Helbram and started a fight, because at this point, that's Meliodas' version of therapy. Helbram was initially being used as a punching bag until he landed a blow that sent Meliodas to the ground. Helbram decided to toy with him and take notes on Meliodas's power levels like Killer Bee as he was embarrassing Sasuke. Meanwhile, Hauser was having a personal crisis while staring into the chasm Marmas had yeeted Diane into. Suddenly, Hawk's mother walked up and casually dropped Diane's clothes into the pit like she was returning dry cleaning. Back to the magical brawl, Meliodas seemed to be gaining the upper hand until Hendrickson, everyone's favorite power donor, lent Hellbrum some juice like Nagato to his pains. With the magical Wi-Fi connection restored, Hellbrum zapped Meliodas into submission. Ban scooped up King and Elizabeth and bolted, with Hawk running behind like a squealing sidekick. Diane, now back in action, arrived just in time to save Meliodas before Hellbrum could kidnap him. She asked Hellbrum if he was the one who hurt Meliodas. When he didn't answer, she unleashed her Mother Earth catastrophe. Hellbrum tried to escape with Gila and Jericho, but Diane's attack caused holes to tear through their flying manta rays. Yes, manta rays, because this world has no chill. The magical link between Hellbrum and Hendrickson got cut off, leaving the villains wondering if Hellbrum just rage quit the group chat. Diane returned to the crew, gently placed Meliodas down like a grumpy toddler, and Ban immediately punched him because what are friends for, if not revenge, hugs with fists. Elizabeth hugged Meliodas and kindly asked him never to go full evil mode again. Griamore, still carrying Veronica, smashed through the rubble with a shield-powered Kool-Aid Man entrance. Elizabeth asked him to bury her sister by the lake where they used to play and vowed to take down the Holy Knights once and for all. Meliodas realized that his sword was missing. Hellbrum, who had sneakily escaped with Guila and Jericho, now very pleased with himself because he had stolen Meliodas's sword, and not just any sword, it was one of the keys to reviving the demon clan. Elsewhere, Hauser learned that Veronica and Griamore were presumed dead and had a minor existential crisis. On top of that, the fragile alliance between Hendrickson and Dreyfus started crumbling. Back with the heroes, Elizabeth vowed to Veronica that everything would change. Diane promised she'd have help from Meliodas and the rest of the 7 deadly sins. Nearby, King and Ban were sparring for practice, aka trying to beat the snot out of each other for fun. Ban declared that he'd save the kingdom and then take the Horn of Cernunnos as payment, because he wanted to call on the goddesses to bring back Elaine. Finally, Meliodas made a vow of his own to end the war that had been going on for over 3,000 years. An armor giant wandered the forest like a very lost tin can, with a boy named Alan tagging along like his emotional support human. When it started raining, they took shelter in a cave. Elsewhere, a knight delivered news to Gila, Jericho, and Hellbrum about sightings of the mysterious armor giant in Ordan Forest. Hellbrum, being the delegation king, decided to send Dawn Roar to handle it. Jericho got salty about not being chosen, but Gila said they should use the time to rest. Later, Gila went to visit her little brother Zeal, who had been mugged on his way home after collecting his hard-earned monthly paycheck. After tucking him into bed, she did what any responsible sister/knight would do: track down the thugs and annihilate them. With love, of course. Meanwhile, Team Chaos arrived and set up shop in the forest. Meliodas sent Elizabeth to the village for herbs. While she and Hawk set off, Diane took a much-needed rest. In the village, Elizabeth and Hawk were not so sneakily hiding behind a rock wall when the Holy Knights showed up. Before they could even think of a plan, Alan popped up like a cheerful NPC and asked if they were playing hide-and-seek. Back in the woods, Ban and Meliodas turned hunting into a testosterone-fueled contest. Meliodas claimed victory after capturing a sword wolf. Ban disagreed, of course, because they turned to King and asked what he caught, only to find him napping on his fancy pillow, like a forest fairy diva. After a bit of teasing and mentioning Diane, naturally, King reluctantly floated off to find something to prove he wasn't just comic relief. Suddenly, a massive growl echoed through the forest like a beast with serious indigestion. Meliodas, always the curious captain, decided they should check it out. Meanwhile, Alan told Elizabeth and Hawk that he was looking for glue. Not for crafting, he needed it to patch up the hole in the armor giant's chest. When asked if he was the giant's friend, Alan got awkwardly quiet. Back with the boys, Meliodas, Ban, and King stumbled upon a field of fallen warriors. One of them warned that Dawn Roar was on the hunt for the armor giant. Meliodas surprisingly put 2 and 2 together and suggested that the armor giant might actually be Gauther, They rushed to the scene just in time to intercept Dawn Roar before they could take down the armor giant. The tension was sky high. Then Alan appeared, still apologizing for not finding glue sweet but seriously misreading the room. Just as a deadly arrow whizzed toward the armor giant, Alan caught it mid-air like an anime hero, having a dramatic coming-of-age moment. He then dropped the biggest bombshell of the day. He was Gauther, the goat sin of lust. Dawn Roar wanted to challenge the 4 deadly sins, but honestly, they were only there for the armor giant's head. You know, classic bounty hunter stuff. Gauther, being the thoughtful robot he is, went ahead and sliced off the armor giant's head and handed it to them gift-wrapped in courtesy to avoid unnecessary chaos. Dawn Roar, satisfied and maybe a little confused, took the head and peaced out. That left the sins alone with a very much still alive armor giant. Not only was he still kicking, but it turned out he used to be human, and not just any human, but a holy knight. Meanwhile, Dawn Roar was scratching their heads, wondering why Hellbrum was so bent on getting rid of this guy. I mean, he had an entire new generation army at his disposal and still sent them instead? Something smelled fishy, and it wasn't just Ban's cooking. Back with the sins, Gauther explained that he had the armor giant wear magic sealing armor, very fashion-forward and practical. But once the armor cracked, so did the seal, and the magic burst out like soda shaken in a blender. Chaos ensued. The armor giant launched into a rampage, and the sins tried to hold him back. Meliodas went in for the finishing blow, but the guy inside begged him not to do it. Ban, who was running on 100% frustration and 0% chill, yelled at Meliodas for hesitating and tried to take matters into his own hands. Gauther, ever the pacifist, said he couldn't do it either. Ban finally used his trusty whip and yanked out the armor giant's heart, probably thinking he'd just saved the day. Meliodas didn't see it that way and got mad, like someone just spoiled the ending to his favorite manga. Elsewhere, Elizabeth and Diane were still waiting for the sins to come back. Then Kane showed up at the Boar Hat, asked if the bar was open, and casually mistook Elizabeth for Liz. Must have been the hair. While sipping his drink, Kane told Elizabeth all about Liz and why Meliodas doesn't carry a sword. Then, like a magician with a dramatic flair, he pulled out a sword and placed it on the bar, saying it was a gift from Liz to Meliodas. He had accepted it on Meliodas's behalf. Back on the battlefield, Meliodas was furious with Ban for killing the armor giant, but Gauther pointed out the guy wasn't actually dead. Turns out he was still trapped in an illusion, and oh yeah, his name was Dale. Also, he just happened to be Gila and Zeal's long-lost dad. Small world. Then things got even worse. Dale turned into a full-blown demon. Meliodas still didn't want to fight him because he's got this whole "I'm Batman and I do not kill" thing going on. Just then, Elizabeth made her grand entrance and tossed the sword to Meliodas. He recognized it as the very one Liz had tried to give him. He caught it like a pro quarterback and turned the demon into chopped meat. The team figured out that Hendrickson was the one behind the demons. They packed up to return to the Boar Hat, all dramatic battles and emotional trauma behind them. Well, except Gauther, who stayed behind to reminisce about when he first met Dale. Elizabeth rejoined the group, and Meliodas, finally showing some gratitude, thanked her for the sword. Elizabeth, ever the optimist, asked Gauther if he'd like to join their quest. Gauther, being as emotionally expressive as a brick wall, accepted with Shikamaru's enthusiasm. Meliodas, always ready to party regardless of the circumstances, immediately suggested they get drunk to celebrate. Mid-celebration, Meliodas turned to Gauther and casually asked if he knew who had attacked him during their great escape from Leonis back when they were wrongly accused of plotting a kingdom-wide coup. Gauther, in his usual no-filter fashion, said he did and dropped the bomb that it was Merlin, the boar sin of gluttony. Meliodas asked why, and Gauther gave the most unhelpful answer ever: "I don't know." But he wasn't done. Gauther then proceeded to air out everyone's secrets like it was confession time on a reality show. Meliodas had to step in to stop him from poking around in people's trauma. Later, Elizabeth asked Meliodas what kind of person Liz was. Meliodas, looking like he was about to recite Shakespeare, said Elizabeth and Liz were complete opposites but also kind of similar because they were both strong. Meanwhile, in Holy Knight headquarters, Dreyfus returned and asked Hauser if anything weird had happened while he was away. Hauser, trying to play it cool, mentioned that more Holy Knights were joining the new generation, which given their track record was like adding gasoline to a fire. Dreyfus sighed and said it was time for a friendly chat with Hendrickson. Elsewhere, Gila and Jericho were training. Gila disarmed Jericho with ease. She then asked why Jericho was off her game.
一つは王国地下で見た魔人と同じもの。そしてもう一つは聖騎士。
Jericho admitted she had been distracted after secretly following Dawn Roar and watching the 7 deadly sins fight a monster like it was Tuesday. She also mentioned feeling 2 magical energies coming from said monster, one of which was definitely a holy knight. Then she pulled out a mysterious amulet she'd found on the corpse. Gila took one look at it and gasped like she'd just seen a plot twist. It was her father Dale's. Meanwhile, Helbram and Hendrickson were busy trying to unlock a gateway to the demon clan. The gateway was too small for them to walk through. They needed one more fragment to break the seal completely. Back with the sins, Meliodas dropped another surprise. He planned to break into the castle to get his sword back. Not just because he missed it, but because the sword was actually a fragment of a relic used to seal away the demon clan. Elizabeth, full of questions and anxiety, wondered why on earth Hendrickson and Dreyfus would want to revive the demon clan. Meliodas just gave her a serious look, which meant things were about to get way worse. Hendrickson, who was joyfully revealing his villain monologue, he wanted to start a holy war. Dreyfus was understandably horrified, but Hendrickson reminded him that he had helped murder his own brother so Dreyfus could grab a promotion to Great Holy Knight. Back at the Boar Hat, things got wild. A mysterious mage appeared out of nowhere and kidnapped Elizabeth because she was the missing piece needed to break the seal to the demon clan. Meliodas screamed like a super saiyan. Ban and Gauther joined him because apparently their group motto was no planning, just vibes. Diane threw them toward the castle with a perfect diamond no ace pitch. They crash-landed like pros and bulldozed through NPC enemies like it was a video game level. But just before they could reach the castle, they felt a powerful magical presence coming from another gate. There, leading an entire army, was none other than Arthur, the new king of Camelot. Arthur Pendragon of Camelot arrived at Leona's. Hendrickson met him at the gate and Arthur said he came to meet the king, but Hendrickson told him to turn back, for the king had suddenly fallen ill, probably from too many banquets, and was been bedridden. Arthur then revealed his companion could cure the king, essentially pulling a magical Uno reverse card. Hendrickson still tried to make him leave, but Arthur refused to leave. Meanwhile, Elizabeth found herself teleported to a locked chamber with Hawke. Naturally, Hawke panicked, not because they were suddenly in the castle, but because he really needed to use the toilet. In a panic-fueled rampage, Hawke, the legendary type Pokemon, smashed down the door. The two made their squeakily escape after Hawke's blitz a guard and knocked him out cold. Elsewhere, Hauser stood among holy knights thinking, thank the gods Diane's not here. Dreyfus asked Helbram what Hendrickson was up to. Gauther, ever the wild card, hypnotized an angry guards into adoring fans. The trio strolled into the capital like they owned the place. Hendrickson suddenly attacked King Arthur after giving out instructions to a mysterious woman, but Arthur wasn't just some pretty boy with a crown. He fought back like a knight. Meanwhile, Diane asked King if he thought Meliodas would go full rescue mission for her if she were captured. King replied yes, because Meliodas was basically a one-man search and rescue team. With that, he summoned Oslo, a giant dog who had a warp gate in his mouth. Diane got stuck halfway as she tried to pass through the glory hole. As Dreyfus headed down to Hendrickson's magical research dungeon, a sudden boom knocked them through the floor and right into a showdown with Diane. Dreyfus asked what she was doing there, and Diane, channeling her inner action heroine, demanded Elizabeth back. Jericho attacked first but was easily slammed away like the first courageous ninja who attacked Madara. Guilthunter, Helbram, and Hauser pulled like the holy Akatsuki to gang up against Diane, but she survived by pulling off her signature move, Ground Gladius, basically turning the floor into an earthquake simulator. Dreyfus clashed with her one-on-one and landed a brutal hit to her chest. She dropped, wounded, but not out. Dreyfus asked Helbram if Elizabeth was really in the capital. Diane confirmed it mid-struggle because pain apparently doesn't stop good exposition. Then Dreyfus sent Diane flying into the capital. Gila ran after her in a panic, mostly because she was worried about her little brother, Zeal. The townsfolk, ever so helpful, started chucking rocks at Diane because Dreyfus labeled her a villain. Diane nearly gave up, but remembered her promise to Elizabeth and a little thing called character development. Just then, buildings started collapsing, but it wasn't Diane. It was Helbram throwing a tantrum with magic. Gila was shook, suddenly questioning if the 7 deadly sins really were traitors or just misunderstood heroes with bad PR. Zeal popped out into the street, spotted Gila, and made a run for her, but a building began to collapse above him. Diane, despite being bruised and battered, jumped in to shield him and took the hit, like Obito. Dreyfus showed up again, and Jericho volunteered to finish Diane off, but Gila and Hauser tag-teamed in to stop her. Hauser and Gila, now fully riding the good guy train, combined their powers to protect Diane and Zeal. Jericho, a cannon fodder with unnecessary screen time, was down from their first attack, and Helbram caught a scratch. Guilt Hunter and Dreyfus stood there completely unfazed, probably wondering if someone turned the difficulty setting to tutorial. Overwhelmed, Hauser and Gila were taken down. Just as Dreyfus prepared to land a finishing blow on Gila, Gauther dramatically entered and saved her. Meanwhile, in the castle dungeon, Elizabeth and Hawke were still on their escape adventure. While searching for an exit, they stumbled upon Elizabeth's older sister Margaret, who apparently pulled a Rapunzel and locked herself up voluntarily. Vivian, the resident chaos sorceress, appeared and insisted Margaret chose to stay because she couldn't bear to leave Guilt Hunter behind. Elizabeth called BS, but before she could say more, Vivian tried to cast something nasty. That's when Hawke, channeling his inner pork foo, headbutted. Infuriated, Vivian teleported Hawke away to who knows where and knocked out Elizabeth. Then, she opened Margaret's cell to see if she has the guts to escape on her own. A few blows were exchanged between Dreyfus and Gauther. Dreyfus turned Gauther to ace with a hole in his chest, and Gauther responded with a mean right hook to the chest. He then hit Dreyfus with a mind trap spell, putting him in under a Tsukiyomi made of confusion and bad memories. Gauther thought he had him until Dreyfus somehow broke free. In the aftermath, Gauther was stabbed through the chest like a kebab. Wounded but somehow still menacing, Dreyfus retreated with Guilt Hunter after telling Helbram to take care of the rest. Back on the battlefield, King arrived just in time to see Diane beat up and barely breathing. His calm demeanor vanished when he found out Helbram was responsible. He threw a tantrum at Hauser for not being able to protect Diane, punching his armor, but Hauser was beyond unfazed as King's fist was equivalent to a newborn baby. King calmed down and locked in, ready to kill. Helbram turned out to be King's old friend. The two fairies, once close friends, faced off in a brutal clash of past bonds and present betrayal. Helbram, proving that he was both powerful and petty, used plants to attack King and turned him into a ping-pong ball. He trapped King by the neck with his vines, forcing him to watch as Diane took more hits, but summoned a massive shield to protect Diane. Helbram was shocked as to why King would go so far to protect a giant at the brink of death. King then told him that it was time to fulfill the promise he made 700 years ago. King began to narrate an emotional flashback. He remembered losing his memory and only retaining the face of the man who had attacked him. It was Helbram. After the attack, King had been found and nursed back to health by a little giant girl, Diane. Despite the weird beginnings, those days turned out to be the happiest of his long, complicated life. Diane, with all her weird quirks, became his whole world. One day, King flew overhead searching for her and spotted Diane talking with a human. Naturally, King spiraled into protective dad bro mode and later warned her about humans being untrustworthy, for they were constantly at war against each other. He even recalled having the same argument with Helbram back in the day. Later, when Diane caught a cold, King tried to go fetch herbs, but she asked him not to leave her alone. That tugged a heartstring or two, triggering a memory of his sister Elaine and the painful goodbye he gave her before chasing Helbram. Thankfully, a friendly hunter who King once saw talking to Diane stumbled into their cave like a plot-delivering Amazon driver and gave Diane the medicine she needed. King chatted with the hunter and learned, to his shock, that a couple of decades had passed since he last interacted with humans. Soon after, while playing with Diane, she accidentally ripped her clothes. King whipped her up an orange jumper to replace her ragged old outfit. He proudly recalled learning to make clothes from humans, even though Elaine once reminded him he was supposed to be guarding the Fairy King forest, not sewing for giants. The two eventually came upon the hunter's village. There, the hunter's family mistook them for a couple, and Diane, being adorably clueless, asked what that meant. King, flustered but sincere, explained the concept of couples. Diane then hit him with the big question, "Do you love me like that?" King, now resembling a tomato in both color and panic, said yes. He even promised to love her forever. But then, King remembered a darker time when fairies, including Helbram, were captured by a one-eyed man. As the Fairy King, he'd failed to stop it. Later, when the human village was suddenly attacked, King left Diane to investigate, promising to return. He arrived to find the village slaughtered by the man with the eye patch, who happened to be Helbram all along. Helbram had killed the man, stolen his identity, and gone full Itachi mode. When King confronted him, Helbram confessed that he'd slaughtered humans because they stole their wings cruelly. Helbram had PTSD after experiencing it, so killing the humans was a way of getting out. But no matter how many he killed, the voices of his fellow fairies in agony could not leave his mind. King tried to stop him, but Helbram had completely lost it. King then killed Helbram with a flower through his chest. Instead of returning to Diane, he took full responsibility for the massacres and allowed himself to be imprisoned for 1,000 years. Back in the present, King faced off against Helbram once again. He asked his old friend if he still wanted to wipe out all humans. Helbram admitted he couldn't stop anymore. It was a battle of old friends, guilt, and flying laser trees. In the end, King emerged victorious. As Helbram lay on the ground, fading fast, King approached with the helmet Helbram had once meant to give him as a gift, which he got from a human. Helbram smiled and died. King apologized to Diane for not being there when she needed him, but Diane, ever the gentle giant, told him it wasn't his fault. She also said his name, Harlequin, sounded familiar. King brushed it off, saying it was probably from a dream. Or, several years of hanging out together as besties, lovebirds. Hauser, who had apparently been standing in the background the whole time like an extra who finally got a line, asked why King and Diane even came to the capital if they weren't planning to stage a full-blown coup. King then told him that they came to rescue Elizabeth, who had been abducted. Back on the Arthur versus Hendrickson battleground, things escalated. Hendrickson, growing suspicious, realized Arthur might know a little too much. Hendrickson launched his sinister Hellblaze wave. Think of a magical Hadouken, but with more fire and fewer health points. Just as it was about to finish Arthur off, in came Meliodas like a one-man army with impeccable timing. He reversed the attack with his full counter and stepped forward, eyes blazing straight up, aura farming. He would not leave without his Elizabeth. Meliodas and Hendrickson finally came face to face. It was like Kevin Hart looking up to Kevin Durant. Meliodas, as blunt as ever, told Hendrickson to hand over Elizabeth. Hendrickson, rocking the full evil final boss aesthetic, replied, "That isn't possible." And with that, fists started flying, swords started clanging. Meanwhile, Guilt Hunter, part-time thunder god and full-time brooder, carried a wounded Dreyfus through the chaos. As he did, he remembered how Meliodas used to train him not just how to swing a sword, but how to believe in himself. Of course, at the time, Guilt Hunter had been convinced he'd never be worthy of the title Holy Knight. But then Margaret, sweet as cinnamon rolls, had believed in him, which meant something. As Guilt Hunter snapped back to the present, he asked Dreyfus what Gauther had made him see when his was under his Tsukuyomi earlier. Dreyfus said it was his greatest sin. He then told Guilt Hunter to return to the battlefield and leave him be. Guilt Hunter, with ice in his veins, left without hesitating. As he walked off, the ever-creepy mage appeared like she had been hiding in a coat rack. She tried to gaslight him into believing that Dreyfus was weak and Hendrickson was the future. Then Hendrickson phoned in, FaceTime style, letting the mage see through his eyes, and she saw he was locked in battle with Meliodas. And just like that, Guilt Hunter got express-mailed into the fight. The battle escalated to a full tag team throwdown between Guilt Hunter and Hendrickson versus Meliodas and Arthur. And for a moment, it looked like Guilt Hunter might actually have the upper hand on Meliodas as he unleashed multiple Kirans at Meliodas, which were easily dealt with by Meliodas using his full counter. Meliodas activated his demonic power and casually flipped the script like a fantasy-themed WWE match. Elsewhere, Hendrickson and Arthur continued their magical chess game until Hendrickson used Amaterasu. Arthur was toast literally until Merlin dropped in like the world's coolest substitute teacher, extinguishing the flames. The team wondered where Ban had wandered off to. Turns out he'd found a hidden tunnel. Elizabeth, having just woken up, found herself locked in a chamber with none other than her father, the king. She hugged him, but the moment was undercut by the mage still being one who told her to enjoy the reunion, because Guilt Hunter was about to end Meliodas. Meanwhile, Guilt Hunter's memory decided now was the perfect time to hit rewind. He remembered asking Meliodas to take him on a mission when he was younger, saying he'd never get stronger if he stayed behind. Back in the present, Meliodas and Guilt Hunter clashed harder than anime fans over power scaling. Hendrickson, fresh off beating Arthur, joined in, and now it was 3-on-1. Even the mage left Elizabeth behind to help, promising to say goodbye to Meliodas on Elizabeth's behalf. Margaret, determined to stop the chaos, climbed a tower to get a view of the battle. Seeing Guilthunter in action, she silently begged him to stop. In true dramatic fashion, she jumped from the ledge, but Meliodas, having approximately zero chill, blasted a magic attack her way. It was revealed he was actually targeting a hidden monster near her. Crisis averted, except now Meliodas was wide open and boom, Meliodas was down. Hendrickson, Guilthunter, and the mage hit him with a magical group special. For a moment, it seemed Meliodas might be done. But then, Guilthunter remembered Meliodas's advice, and it worked. Guilthunter broke free of the mage's curse, turned on Hendrickson, and sliced off his arm like it was deli meat. Margaret, of course, floated safely down into Arthur's arms with the help of his mage. Guilthunter then told Meliodas he'd take it from here. He charged Hendrickson with the full force of his rage, his resolve, and seemingly destroyed him in one glorious anime-worthy moment. Later, Margaret awoke in Guilthunter's arms, safe and sound. Meliodas thanked Arthur for his help, while the mage, who turned out to be a sore loser, threw a magical tantrum. Then Merlin stepped in again, ever the queen of timing, and exposed the mage's true identity. The evil mage was Vivian, her former apprentice. Vivian looked like she had just seen her GPA crash. Elizabeth was with her father, who very casually dropped the bombshell that they'd be separated again soon. He could see into the future. He told her he'd be rescued soon with the help of a crimson boar. After Ban finally found the horn of Cernunnos and, being the self-sacrificing romantic he was, asked it to bring Elaine back and take him instead. He didn't get an answer right away, but instead, Hawk popped up, casually asking where Elizabeth was, as if he'd just wandered in looking for snacks. Hawk explained how he ended up chilling underground with a glowing ancient relic. He tried to convince Ban to leave, but Ban had unfinished business. And just then, the horn started glowing like a magical nightlight, agreeing with Ban's heroic resolve. It told him they'd lost most of their powers during the ancient war and needed time to recover. Ban, ever curious, asked if they could really grant wishes. The goddesses offered to bring Elaine back, but only if Ban agreed to a mission. Hawk was immediately worried, but Ban, being Ban, was all in. The mission was to kill Meliodas. Meanwhile, Jericho woke up to find Guila and Zeal hovering over her. Guila told her that the 7 deadly sins had beaten them. She then asked Jericho why she drank the demon blood in the first place. Elsewhere, Merlin interrogated Vivian about Elizabeth's location. Vivian had hidden her behind some magically unbreakable seal, which Merlin broke anyway using absolute cancel. Meliodas reunited with Elizabeth, only for Dreyfus to walk in like a nosy dad at the worst moment. Guilthunter spilled the tea about beating Hendrickson and failing to atone for a mysterious sin. Margaret commented, revealing that Dreyfus and Hendrickson had killed Zaratras. Vivian had overheard and blackmailed them. Dreyfus admitted to the murder, but Meliodas asked why that mattered now, what with all the apocalypse-level stuff happening. Dreyfus gave a heartfelt speech about wanting to be a good dad, bit late, but A for effort. Elizabeth revealed that Griamore was still alive, and the king promptly fired himself from being Grand Master. Then he collapsed. Merlin offered to heal him, but only in Camelot. Elizabeth, seeing Merlin's Crimson Boar tattoo, agreed. Arthur, Merlin, and the king teleported away, leaving everyone else in a room that literally exploded seconds later. Everyone survived except for Dreyfus, who vanished. Hendrickson and Vivian then crashed the castle party. Hendrickson had awakened demon blood in the Holy Knights, who transformed into monsters like he was Muzan. Jericho mutated, but Diane kept her busy while Gauther relocated the civilians. Hendrickson, now looking like he'd hit the demon gym hard, demanded Elizabeth. King tried to stop him but got intercepted by Helbram, now undead and still cranky. Hendrickson fought Hauser, and when Guilthunter and Meliodas teamed up, Vivian pulled her usual stunt, kidnapping Margaret and Elizabeth. With Meliodas distracted, Hendrickson injured Guilthunter and stabbed Meliodas, who definitely didn't see that coming. Elizabeth begged him to stop and offered to go willingly, but not before reminding Meliodas of his promise to find the 7 deadly sins and stop the Holy Knights. Meliodas tried to follow, but Ban and Hawk blocked his path. Ban then attacked Meliodas like full-on betrayal moment. Meliodas survived -1 arm, reattached it like a demonic Lego figure, and unleashed his demon powers. Ban asked whether he was from the demon race. Meliodas didn't answer Ban's question. Ban took his silence as a yes. The two of them faced off like ex-besties in a very tense family reunion. Then Hawk announced that Ban had made a deal with the goddesses. That little bombshell caught Meliodas off guard, giving Ban the perfect chance to land a solid hit. Ban revealed that the goddesses told him everything, including the part where Meliodas used to hang out with the people who killed Elaine. Meliodas, clearly weighed down by guilt and trauma, returned to normal and told Ban to go ahead and kill him. Meanwhile, Diane was still struggling to keep Jericho busy. Hauser was being chased around like a knight-shaped chew toy, King and Helbram were airborne brawling like angry squirrels, and Gauther was trying to calm Guyla down from her monster makeover moment. Elsewhere, Hendrickson and Elizabeth ran into Dreyfus, who apparently had a redemption arc queued up. Dreyfus told Hendrickson he was done being evil adjacent and that he was going to make things right. Bold move for someone in a medieval armor set. Back with Ban, he prepared to land the finishing blow on Meliodas, but Meliodas fought back, reminding Ban that he couldn't just abandon Elizabeth. He wasn't about to let Ban stab him to death, no matter how tragic the backstory. Hawk pleaded with Ban to think this through, warning that if the goddesses were lying, he'd lose his best friend. Ban, holding in a tidal wave of emotions, said that without Elaine, he was living in hell. Meliodas, being surprisingly mature for once, agreed to settle things later, after they dealt with the current demon crisis. Ban agreed, and Meliodas asked Hawk to take him to Elizabeth. Ban, now temporarily back on the team, chucked a hyper-recovery marble at Guilt Hunter and Diane like senzu beans. King continued his duel with Helbram, trying to get him to stop being a homicidal zombie. Helbram basically said, "Just kill me already," in the most tragic way possible. Elsewhere, Gustav was searching for Jericho, found her, and was promptly crushed by her new Hulk hands. She screamed in horror and begged someone, anyone, to end her misery. Hendrickson and Dreyfus clashed, their magic blasts colliding in a deadly explosion. Hawk was racing to the scene, Meliodas riding her like a pig-shaped rocket ship. She called out to Elizabeth to hang on. As the dust cleared, instead of Hendrickson, Dreyfus saw that Elizabeth had been hurt. He rushed to her side, full of regret, but Hendrickson, who clearly didn't know when to quit, jumped back in and broke Dreyfus's sword, declaring the fight over. Guilt Hunter saved Gustav from being flattened further, and Jericho begged Diane to end her suffering. Helbram, on the other hand, asked King to end him. King summoned a sunflower, which then fired a laser that vaporized Helbram. Mother Nature, 1, Undead 0. Ban offered to kill Jericho, but instead freed her by destroying the demon inside. The 7 deadly sins regrouped, ready to save Elizabeth. Ban and King, however, stayed behind to clear out the remaining demon monsters. Then, like a well-timed cavalry, the Dawn Roar arrived to assist them. Hendrickson, now fed up with any kind of resistance, erased Dreyfus Thanos style, just as Hawk and Meliodas arrived on the scene. Meliodas grabbed Elizabeth, tossed her on Hawk's back, and sent them off to safety. Then he turned to face Hendrickson, who really needed to start reading the room. Hendrickson tried to stop them from escaping, but Meliodas speed blitzed him and sliced his hand off. He then followed with a barrage of hits. Hendrickson, ever cunning, fired dark flames from the arm that Meliodas had chopped off. Just as things got dicey, Diane and the rest of the gang showed up to help, along with some very motivated holy knights. Meliodas, King, and Diane tag-teamed Hendrickson, who, despite to King a beating, just kept getting back up like a boss fight on hard mode. Hendrickson even knocked Ban into a wall, but Ban, being Ban, stood up and asked about the thin he saw through the wall. Ban absolutely pummeled him with a Gatling rush that brought the whole wall down, revealing a demon. Hendrickson, grinning like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, declared that this creature was the source of it all. Hendrickson stood tall in front of the demon's dead and ominous-looking corpse. The 7 deadly sins stared, all doing mental math like, "Wait, this isn't even the final boss?" Gauther, always the magic-sniffing expert, said he could sense the same aura from the corpse as he did from the new generation. Hendrickson announced that they found the demon 20 years ago, like he'd just remembered a long-forgotten science fair project. Then, he attacked using the power of the red demon. Ban, who had apparently skipped self-preservation class, got impaled by some purple tentacle magic, shrugged it off, and rushed Hendrickson like a man on a mission. Ban slammed Hendrickson into the ground after saying that he was the one who killed the red demon. Then, like it was just another Tuesday, he smashed the demon corpse with his nunchucks. The Sins decided to jump into the crater Ban made. They left Diane above to act as a lookout. Inside the cave, they followed a lovely trail of blood until they found Hendrickson again, chilling next to the gray demon's leftovers. Hendrickson injected himself with demon blood and transformed into an Otsutsuki. The Holy Knights finally came to their senses and questioned their actions. Guilt Hunter said it didn't matter because the Sins were the ones who'd saved them. Before anyone could get a proper speech out, a massive blast launched Diane into the sky like a rag doll shot from a cannon. Hendrickson and the Sins emerged from below like it was their own rock concert entrance. Hendrickson began attacking the Holy Knights with a dark purple snow-like shower, which killed most of them instantly. Dawn Roar, Guilt Hunter, Gila, and Hauser jumped in heroically, but their attacks may as well have been wet noodles. Elizabeth finally woke up and begged everyone to run, saying Hendrickson was way too OP. They didn't listen, and Hendrickson, standing on business, went straight to work. He began slicing through them like tofu. Meliodas was the last one standing, guarding Elizabeth like a stubborn doorstop until he collapsed from exhaustion. That's when Hendrickson went full anime villain and used Dead End, an attack that literally kills anything it touches. He tossed it at Meliodas, and then Hawk, the legendary Pokemon and the Bacon of Destiny, sacrificed himself and took the hit, becoming roast pork in the most heroic way possible. Elizabeth threw herself on top of Hawk, sobbing like every sad montage scene ever, and then she started glowing like a divine flashlight. She wasn't just some princess, she was a druid priestess and an apostle of the goddesses. Elizabeth, now glowing and intimidating, asked Hendrickson why he was doing this. He replied her simply saying that it was for the resurrection of the demon race and revenge on the Force clans for sealing them away. He then launched a Dark Nebula attack. Elizabeth, suddenly full Jedi, countered with her own light magic that erased his attack and healed everyone. A wave of healing light poured from Elizabeth with enough magical juice to restore HP to literally everyone. Outside the city, even Veronica watched from a distance, all healed up. Hendrickson was injured, but like a man who had nothing to lose, he kept going. Dawn Roar and the Holy Knights rallied once more, but then Hendrickson used a freeze move on Guilt Hunter. He went to strike him down, but Meliodas kicked Hendrickson into the dirt and made him go down with a critical blow to his stomach. Standing tall and angry, Meliodas declared, "Be strong. The Avengers are here." The Avengers launched their final assault. They were all in sync and landing critical combos on Hendrickson. The Holy Knights watched like anxious spectators at a magic WWE match. Meliodas, the group's pint-sized powerhouse, told Gauther to beam a battle plan into everyone's minds, like Ino Yamanaka. Meliodas then took on Hendrickson one-on-one while the rest of the Sins provided supportive explosions from the sidelines. Unfortunately, Meliodas caught a few of those attacks too, but it was a strategy. It looked like Meliodas was prepared to go full kamikaze if it meant stopping Hendrickson once and for all. And then, boom, Meliodas unleashed revenge counter, now supercharged from absorbing everyone's attacks. The power of friendship was so powerful. Hendrickson tried to fly off like a bat exposed to light, but Griamore trapped him in a giant magical hamster ball. Hendrickson broke free, but it was too late. Meliodas hit him with the mother of all finishers, and Hendrickson was blown to confetti. Meliodas crashed to the ground, injured but alive. Elizabeth rushed to his side, where they shared a tender anime moment, and the King of Leonis pulled like Black Panther. The Holy Knights dropped to their knees begging for punishment. The king, possibly the chillest monarch in history, sentenced them to keep being Holy Knights, but this time with honor, responsibility, and fewer apocalyptic cover-ups. He then thanked the Sins for not only saving the kingdom, but also for babysitting his daughter while fighting demons, political corruption, and their own emotional baggage. Elizabeth cried over Hawk's crispy remains, blaming herself. Meliodas told her Hawk knew she did her best, especially considering she unlocked divine magic and healed half the kingdom. Ban even apologized to Hawk's charred corpse for being mean, which is basically his version of a hug. Merlin asked Gauther what happened to the armor she gave him. He casually said it broke. Merlin sighed and promised to get him a new one. Meliodas, desperate, promised Hawk all the food scraps in the world if he'd just come back. Suddenly, Hawk's body crumbled away, revealing a tiny chibi Hawk alive and squealing. Hawk resurrected like Lazarus, and the entire group cheered like kids at a carnival. Meliodas and Elizabeth shared a hug but were interrupted by Veronica, Elizabeth's sister. The sisters reunited with hugs and tears. Elizabeth asked if they could go home, and Meliodas said yes. Later, Merlin told Meliodas that the coffin of eternal darkness was missing. Apparently, a weird bird-like creature had been seen flying south right after the battle, like it had stolen the sequel's plot hook. Merlin said she'd stay behind to investigate. The kingdom of Lyones slowly began to recover. Meanwhile, Diane found King and revealed she'd accidentally taken a shrinking potion from Merlin. King saw this as his golden opportunity to ask her to the festival, so naturally, he panicked and told her to ask Meliodas instead. Diane, channeling every reverse Uno in existence, asked King instead. He nearly fainted. Elsewhere, Jericho was sulking about losing her powers, but relieved to not be a demon anymore. She said she owed it all to Ban, and then immediately got mad thinking about him. Gila stopped by, and Jericho pointed out how lucky she was to have kept her powers. Gila credited it to Love and Gauther, who awkwardly waved from inside her house like a Sims character. Guilt Hunter visited Meliodas, Ban, and Hawk at the Boar Hat. He said he was leaving the capital, feeling guilty for his cursed actions. He planned a Sasuke redemption journey. As fireworks lit the sky, Elizabeth narrated that her journey of finding the 7 deadly sins had ended. Over dinner with her family, she found out that the sins were leaving that very day, and the king forbade her from saying goodbye. But Meliodas, king of chaos, showed up anyway, inviting her to join the sins once more. He told her they still had one sin left to find, and Elizabeth said yes. The Avengers were once again back together. Ban told Meliodas he was leaving for now to travel the world, but promised he'd return. Meliodas said fine, but they had unfinished business. He asked Merlin about what really happened 10 years ago, and she ominously replied that it was a long story. Meliodas grinned and said, "I've got time." In the past, a memory surfaced, Meliodas kneeling beside Liz as she died. Her final words, "We'll meet again." Thank you coming with us to the finish line of this adventurous anime filled with love, tragedy, and amazing actions. Please do not hesitate to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and to turn on the notification bell. Also like our videos and leave a comment below them. Keep dreaming and keep discovering new parts of yourself.